Jay, what are your thoughts on rhythm games?
Yes, let's get into this. Let's get into this.
Yeah, okay. So like I had a theory. I mean, not even a theory to like why they're so popular, but no, yeah, why they're so popular. So like as a gamer,
As a gamer.
I feel as though I'm inclined to make some statements. The American video game market's fucking dead, you know? Like the games that we produce by the major companies are all shooters. And, you know, we get shit like, oh, Tom Clancy's Wildlands or whatever the fuck. Stuff like that. We get a lot of the same. Like, you get a third-person shooter, you get a first-person shooter. It's all shooters. They're all made by the same 3 companies with the occasional Fallout or Skyrim that is in there just to freshen the taste in your mouth. And, you know, like, it's not even the game content that I think is the issue, but what you'll notice about Japanese games and Japanese companies specifically, like a very popular one that everyone knows, Nintendo. Nintendo not only changes the formulas of their games quite often, going from games like changing Zelda from like a linear story-based game to like Breath of the Wild, an open adventure game where you can literally start the game and go fight the final boss and it's over, and you can do it in like 15 minutes if you chose to do so.
Wait, really?
Breath of the Wild, yeah, you don't have to be like the first objective they give you is defeat Ganon.
That's
That's
kind of sweet. Dude, Breath of the Wild, I never played it, but I always saw you and Josh play it. Dude, it
I
looks so much
100%
fun.
completed that game.
It
Every
looks so
armor
much
set,
fun.
all Korok seeds, everything. It took forever.
I need to finish that game.
I have played that game to hell and back. But there are games like that, and they change the formulas, and even more different than that with games like Waka or systems like the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo and Japanese companies, they not only change the formula of their games, but they change how you play them. So like rhythm games now aren't just something where you press a button or a key a bunch of times, like OS. Like if you play OS as like a key-bound game, you can press the keys in order. It's like Guitar Hero. Or you get games like Waka where the controller is a round touchscreen, and you can change, like the whole dynamic of the game switches up from being like a normal rhythm game to being an interactive like disc that you touch, and like they change it, like that one game where you spin things,
Yeah.
or Groove Coaster where it's like, so the game isn't just changing like how it's played, it's changing literally like how you control it, and that's very interesting. And I think that's how Japan has made rhythm games so successful, is by they don't release like Guitar Hero and Rock Band, like 2 of the same game with a slightly different controller that looks a little different. They release like Groove Coaster and Waka and like all this crazy shit where like the control scheme is completely different from game to game, and I think that's how they would keep it fresh and interesting and like an open market.
Can I ask something?
Yes.
Why do you think the American companies haven't tapped into that?
I know.
Well, it's kind of run. I mean, I'm just speculating. Luke says he knows, but like, I'm kind of speculating that American companies kind of around here, like they have the lock, you know? Like you get Call of Duty is probably the biggest like game in the United States. Like all boys have played Call of Duty, all dudes, you know? And it's really hard to change the formula or break up what you're doing whenever they're still selling so much. And for those people that want something different, like that could really use a Breath of the Wild or like something very fresh, you really can't get it because it's so saturated in things that have already been done.
Luke, what about
Basically, what Jay said, a lot of it is sales security. You don't want to put out a failure, and that's what companies fear. That's a lot of money. When it comes to making a video game, it is a lot of money to make one.
Cheap.
It's not even close to cheap. So when you have companies like Bethesda who put out Skyrim 6 times, they do it because it's sales security. They know that they can sell it, they know they can make money off of it, and they know that it won't fail. Same with Call of Duties. They're all the same because the system, if it works, you don't fix it.
Yeah, it's which is where like in the case of like the United States game market, and I would assume like maybe even like the European and United Kingdom market, like things like that, a lot of the really interesting games that you can find, like the cool shit, like The Long Dark, and the
that game is
Risk of
awesome.
Rain and stuff like that. The really interesting stuff comes from like indie developers, and they will never sell as good as the big name stuff because they simply just don't have the money to market it and get it out to the people.
Do you think like a reason why Americans haven't like tapped into rhythm games like that so much is because in Japan, they already have like the established culture of arcades being very popular. Whereas we talked about here earlier, arcades are not as popular. So they have a huge physical booth that you can actually like play, and you go to this place and you play this giant machine where you can't really like do that with a Call of Duty or a Skyrim or anything of those like they say AAA titles like that. I mean, you go to a place, they might have like a little Call of Duty shooter and like a CC's Pizza or something.
Yeah.
But do you think that could be like a reason why in America it's like, well, we don't even have arcades, they're not really popular, so would we even attempt to make something like Waka or anything like of that nature?
Yeah, I think that probably has a lot to do with it. You know, in Japan, Alex has been there. He said the arcades are like, they're not like a building. Like they're like several floors of games is from what I understand.
Yeah.
Whereas here, like the closest thing we have to an arcade that is widely available is like a CC's or a Chuck E. Cheese. And in those places, you're going to get games that are geared towards like tickets and things like that. And yeah, you're right. Like the games that are very popular over here are like the shooters and stuff. And, you know, I'm not going to say I don't play violent video games, but like a violent game is, like much harder to put in an arcade. So like what's popular over here are like the Call of Duties and the Halos and Gears of War and stuff like that. Where in an arcade, you're right, they'll have the games that are like you pick up the rifle and you shoot it, but like even those, it's like they're all the same.
Yeah, you're still doing the same thing.
You're doing the same thing. And I have a lot of respect for like game developers and like game companies that aren't afraid to make something weird, you know? Like the idea of a game where the screen is in the center of a giant disc that you touch all around and you just kind of like move your hands and you swipe and you tap and you do all this stuff. That's really ambitious. Like that's going totally astray from what the market is saying works. And when you do that, you're putting a lot of money on the line, and I guess if you have the money to do it, it's like, oh, we'll make it a mini project. But it takes a lot of balls to put something like that out, because it might not sell, and you might lose a lot of money doing it.
Yeah, because you're not only making just like the code for the game, you are making a physical product.
You have to produce the cabinet. Like,
yeah, you have the cabinet. You have like the touch sensors in the circle,
which work perfectly.
They were super sensitive.
You barely touch it and it registers like right away.
It was just crazy. That game, that Waka specifically, caught my attention the
Very
most.
ambitious.
Never seen anything like it
Never.
before. Absolutely amazing.
I think the thing is that, especially with rhythm games, it could be quote unquote the same formula, but it's never the same. Yeah. You could go from one one rhythm game to the other. The entire premise is the exact same. You want to hit the notes when they get to a certain part of the screen and the beat of the song. And that's the premise across the board. But you could have so many different mechanics to do that every single time you play a rhythm game, you could play the same exact song on 6 different cabinets and it'd feel like a different song every time.
You know what else is like pretty cool about that? So they have obviously a pretty decent song selection on most of these things anyway.
Very large.
You know, they can always add more songs with like updates and stuff. Whereas if you update like a Call of Duty and get like another map pack, you're still getting the same thing, just a different terrain.
At its core, it's the
like
same.
you could get a song that you just totally fuck with, and I mean, I could spend like an hour playing through Railgun like 100 times.
Yeah,
to see if I could beat my own score
getting
with
like
it.
perfect at it. I get that.
And you go the next week, and there's another song you really like, or another 10 songs you really like. You can just keep going back.
I mean, it helps too that on some of these games, man, there's like 75 to 100 songs to choose from. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like you're bound to like at least a couple of those in the selection.
Oh, of course.
So if you're trying to perfect your like score in one of them, you get sick of it eventually. Just move to another song. I guarantee there's got to be dozens in there that you like.
I'm gonna make like a weirdly controversial statement.
Let's hear it.
Right about now.
We're getting controversial on the podcast.
Yeah, that's fine.
today,
I
man.
mean,
I'm down with it.
I play a shitload of video games, and I'm on an anime podcast, so anything I say, take it with a grain of salt. I'm a dweeb, big fucking nerd.
Nerd.
I think that the violence that is portrayed in video games, and I'm fine with it. I'm not gonna say, oh, violent video games cause all the trouble in the world. I think the violence in the video games that we're selling is the problem with the market, because whenever you create a market that is obsessed with like the weapons and the guns and all that, and I'm not going to say there aren't violent video games that are ambitious. There was Sekiro and Dark Souls and things like that. Those are really cool games, and they have their own mechanics.
I'm not going to say that I'm agreeing with you for the most part.
Yeah.
In that, I feel like we're really shitting on Call of Duty right now.
I'm
honest and
shitting on any
truthfully.
shooter.
Yeah, but I mean, like, honest and truthfully, we are at our core shitting on Call of Duty. It's the same thing every time. All people care about are gun skins in it. Nobody really cares about the game itself. But like, at the same time, you have third-person shooters, which are a completely different realm.
Yes.
You have your Mass Effects, Spec Ops: The Line, which I don't know if any of you guys have ever played or even heard of.
That's
it.
a cool game.
That game is awesome.
Yes.
It is one of
Never
the,
got a sequel
It never got a sequel. It's
because it
got,
got swept under the rug.
got one of the best stories I've ever played in a shooter.
Got
Fantastic.
swept under the
This-
rug by Call of Duty, or just big
Just
name
in
Just mass
general.
market games. Yeah.
big name shooters.
It's from a company in Berlin called Jaeger.
Yeah.
So if you've never even heard of them, that tells you how
There you
tells you
go.
how that went.
That's all I needed.
Yes. Well, I'm sorry. I'm just saying, like, I think that the market is too obsessed with violence, and when you come to games that aren't violent, like, what's a game that comes to mind right now? Like, I'm gonna say Breath of the
Mario.
Wild, but like the Mario games, like, yeah, the Mario games, like, what they've been changing the formula on these recent games, like, boom, every single time. Like Mario Odyssey to what was the new one? Mario 3D World. I don't
3D
know.
World.
The
Well, I
new-
mean, like shit. You could even just say just the three-dimensional ones.
Yes.
You go from 64
Yep.
to Sunshine, which adds a whole ass
Wait,
mechanic.
by the way, they're rebooting that for Switch.
Are
They're-
they
yeah,
really?
they're,
Yeah.
they're bringing out a
Yeah.
trilogy
Ooh,
of.
that's
It's going to be.
exciting.
64 Sunshine,
64 Sunshine
and
Galaxy.
Galaxy, all in one pack.
Dude,
Yeah,
But you
super
have
exciting.
like even just the Mario 3D games. You don't have to talk about the 2D games at all because the 2D games did something completely different on the side.
They created platforming.
Yeah.
That was their market.
Yeah, like it might as well be like you have Mario, you have your 3D games and the 2D games. There, you cannot put them in the same category, even though they're both the same exact game.
I just thought of something interesting.
Yes.
Do you think that the reason those games aren't as popular in America as shooters are is because the multiplayer?
I
Partially.
partially, but I also think you'll see this on a lot of forums. People like kind of push Nintendo into the corner of like kids games.
That's
As-
what I was thinking.
As
the
soon
same
as a
thing.
game has an E for everyone tag, everybody kind of just goes towards like, oh, that's a game for kids. You know, like Breath of the Wild was rated T for violence and things, and that game was a masterpiece. But it's kind of already like everybody loves it, and everybody that's played it will tell you how fantastic the game was. But you're gonna hear more about like what's the Halo 5 coming out.
I think six.
Six or
Six.
something.
You're,
Six.
you're gonna hear more about Halo than you are about the Breath of the Wild sequel that has been announced and is being worked on
For a while
for
now.
a while.
Last E3 they announced
They
it.
announced it, and you're not going to hear shit about that till it drops, and then you're going to hear about it. Nothing else, because
It's gonna
everyone's going to talk about
drop
how
off.
Warzone got an update. You know, our market is obsessed with the violence in all the games.
I think I don't want to go any farther on what I'm about to say because
Go
I
ahead.
don't want to make it political at all. That's
go
the
ahead.
last thing I want.
Yeah, of course.
But I think a lot of it,
we're not a political podcast.
no, and I don't want to touch on it a bit, but I think a lot of it dives into the Americanism. You know what I mean? Like the gun-toting, strong,
Toxic patriotism.
Thank you.
toxic.
Yep.
Yeah, I
That's
think
exactly
that's
what it is.
really where it is.
You don't
It's
got to
in-
get political, but I fucking will.
I don't want to go anymore.
I'm
on
not
it.
gonna get, like,
we still
political,
we still got
political,
some stuff to get
we
to.
do.
But I think that's really where it comes from because
Yes.
people are like, "What Mario compared to Call of Duty? That's not cool. That's not tough." You know, I want to shoot a gun.
Did
I
you
want
play the
to.
new Mario Odyssey? Did you play Mario Odyssey?
No,
Fucking
I
masterpiece.
watched. I
It
watched
is a
people play it.
masterpiece.
I watched so many things on it. It's so fucking.
Dude, I
awesome.
played through Breath of the Wild. I played through. They created. Here's another one. Have you guys heard of XCOM?
Yeah.
Yeah,
XCOM
absolutely.
Enemy Unknown.
Absolutely.
Nintendo created a game where they. I don't.
It was Rabbids Mario versus
yeah, I was
Rabbids.
gonna say I don't totally agree with who they merged with, but they did Mario Raven Rabbits.
Really?
And they did an XCOM style game where it was a strategy turn-based game
with
where-
Mario
with
characters
Mario
versus Rabbids.
versus well with the rabbits. You were against Mario enemies.
But why?
Or
but,
Mario
like,
and
here's
Rabbids,
the
it's
thing.
something like that.
Here's
Mario
the thing.
Rabbits
Like,
something.
why
bad
didn't I
about
hear about it? Because it's not cool.
It was
it's not
be-
tough,
okay.
man.
I have played XCOM. I have played XCOM Enemy Unknown, and I have played XCOM 3. That is 2 of the 3 XCOM games. Nintendo did it better. They made it look better. It was more fun to play. The XCOM games are like, you upgrade your shit and research these materials, and you skip all the information because it's like, oh, we discovered this and this. Mario was like, hey, you found a plunger gun, shoot it at this plant, and you did it. It was fun, and it was really, really, and there was boss. It was fun.
I completely agree with you. I think I would find the Mario X Rayman Rabbids way more fun than XCOM, but
they added
it's
multiplayer
not,
to it.
But to a lot of people, it's not like that cool, gritty kind of thing. You know what I mean? Essentially, I'm just drawing back to the point that I said earlier. It's that. What'd you say, Luke?
Toxic patriotism.
The toxic patriotism, the American way, the American way, America, man, America. I think that's, at the end of the day, in my opinion, I think that's where the root of the. If you want to call it an issue, a problem,
Yep.
I think that's where it
And
stems.